way at King Park here, again all the way to down, if we're going left here, near the corner of 17th and Vliet, all the way down to, I believe, 14th and Vliet, all blocked off. It doesn't seem there's a lot of officers specifically in King Park here, just kind of blocking this area off, standing by the police tape as police are investigating.
Yeah, you mentioned something, too, that we would not be normally happening this week. Other media in town. We're talking thousands of members of the press, some of them even from out of the country. So if they heard of something happening a mile away from Fiserv Forum, they may be rushing over to check out what's happening in the scene. It's not just us local media covering this event.
And what's interesting here, this is taking place what appears to be in a park. We did reach out to the sheriff's office because a lot of times they would be involved, the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, if this may have happened in the park. We are told by the county sheriff this is a Milwaukee police investigation and the Secret Service. So the Secret Service is involved, and that their understanding is this incident may have taken place not in the park but just adjacent to, so just outside of the park that is clearly closed off here at 14th and Vliet.
And you would presumably think that they've trained for situations like this. If the out-of-town police officers become involved in some sort of police act or something happens, who's in charge of the scene? How does that unfold? Obviously, when it's just Milwaukee police officers in town, it's pretty clear the chain of command, but that can change when you've got new people that you've never worked with, new agencies that you've never worked with who are patrolling your streets, who are on the streets, but presumably they've talked about that. Steph, we're seeing some movement out there. What's going on?
Yes. Yeah, it appears that group that we just were watching, kind of put on their tactical gear and gear up over the past 10 minutes or so, is now moving towards King Park, walking in a line. I
think that's the community
heading under
center
the
there,
crime
correct?
scene tape there. I believe so.
Yeah, the community center,
Yes.
just for some perspective, at King Park is going to be the northwest corner. And then the rugby field, if you're familiar with that area, is more in the center. And then to the south is where Highland is going to be. So this is a large area of the city.
I can't tell. Did they just leave the crime scene? Because I just saw them walk under the tape, and now where they headed, I don't know if our photographer can follow them.
Yeah, we are blocked right here because there's crime scene tape right in front of where we're standing. What I can see from my vantage point is that all the way down here, there's crime scene tape in this portion of King Park. Excuse me. I can't see, just because of the hill there, how far down the crime scene tape goes, but I know that this area is blocked off, so there very well could be more of an investigation or more activity in that area.
We are learning that the mayor of Milwaukee is commenting on this public incident. We have a crew, obviously, because of the RNC, which is taking place just a mile and a half away from this scene. We have a crew there asking the mayor his response to this. If you are just joining us, run a recap here. We know that an officer from Columbus, Ohio, shot a person in the area of 14th and Vliet on Milwaukee's north side. This is just outside of King Park, but that whole area is closed down now as the medical examiner confirms that this is a death investigation.
And sorry, working some sources here, but yeah, and we're seeing this large police response. Stephanie Quirk saying one of the largest police responses she's seen, and certainly this being so close to the Republican National Convention, there are so many teams of law enforcement. I cannot describe to someone who is not in downtown Milwaukee either today or yesterday what the scene is like. I was on Wisconsin Avenue. I was describing it to someone, it seemed like a zombie apocalypse a little bit, because there was no one in the streets, because all the action obviously is happening over at Fiserv Forum. But there are events taking place that was in the soft perimeter, and you just have dozens of officers walking around on foot. There are dozens of officers on bikes. I saw at least a dozen officers on horses. And they're just patrolling that whole area. And then there are officers from out of town that are helping the Milwaukee Police Department patrol the rest of the city, because as the huge event is going on that has all this extra security, they want to make sure that they're still performing and having the level of service that we're accustomed to here in the city of Milwaukee for all the other things that could be happening. So the role of officers kind of away from Fiserv Forum not completely clear, but we do know that those officers are helping out on our streets.
Information is coming in by the second. We are working to get a second crew set up here on scene to give you a different vantage point. But we did just get a news release from the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, in Columbus, Ohio. So this would be pertaining to the officer from Columbus, Ohio,
That'd be their
who
union,
shot this
correct.
person. I'm just going to read it, Ben. So the FOP has recently been made aware that members of the Columbus Division of Police were involved in this officer-involved shooting. They say that the president has been in contact with the Wisconsin state president, the FOP president that is, that no officers have been injured. However, the condition of the suspect is currently unknown. Officers, along with multiple officers from other jurisdictions, are all there for the RNC. So it does appear this Columbus, Ohio officer, not surprisingly, was here for some part of the secure presence for the RNC, and that's why they were here in the first place.
And we do know this is a deadly incident because the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner has been called to the scene, and they don't get called to a scene unless there has been a death on the scene. So that we do know that they've been called as we're seeing this large police presence. Stephanie Quirk, I want to go back to you because obviously we saw this giant tactical team show up. Have we seen any officers come or leave since that big team arrived? And I'm hearing some shouting going on.
Yeah, actually, we're moving right now. We are moving because we're hearing some shouting. Right here, you can see this is a different vantage point we have here. Officers are telling us to move out of the roadway. As you mentioned, we did see that line of officers after they put their tactical gear on enter the area of King Park here. And the whole area here near 17th and Vliet is blocked off. As you can see, more vehicles appear to be entering, unmarked vehicles are entering the area here. From our vantage point, we can't see specifically what those officers who just appeared to put on the tactical gear did entering King Park, but I do see some kind of walking the area investigating. More people are showing up here to the scene. We're hearing, as you can see, probably hear.
Give you a breather here. The number of unmarked vehicles, Ben, arriving on scene, pretty unusual for a Milwaukee police investigation. So obviously, there may be some other outside agencies involved here. Not surprising considering how many law enforcement officers and agencies are here for the RNC.
Right, exactly. And people who would show up in unmarked vehicles could be members of the Milwaukee Police Department. They do arrive sometimes in unmarked squads, members of the Secret Service, although they usually do have those big black SUVs. And you could tell, Steph, those are Milwaukee police officers that are patrolling, that are in charge of that road right there, right?
I think she was actually going to try to talk to some people to get some sound.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, obviously things are changing by the minute, but just to give you some more, you can see up to the left there, that several apartment complexes and homes on that side of King Park. You've got the MLK Community Center, the rugby field. There's a church just outside of this park. So undoubtedly, several people had to have been in close proximity to exactly where this happened. We do know that this is a Milwaukee police investigation. The sheriff's office has confirmed to us that they are not involved in this, so that this incident may have happened just outside of the park.
And we're seeing such a large police perimeter, you know, and we're seeing, look, you can see some of the neighbors, I believe, who are inside the perimeter. And there's a child right there too. Yeah, you can see what happens when sometimes a crime happens right out of your street. Suddenly you're just stuck inside your home because they're not going to let you leave. I don't know if these people can leave the back, but obviously they're wondering what just happened on their block as well. But look how large the police perimeter here is. If we zoom in, I don't even think we can see the other side. You see all these vehicles that are in there. So yeah, on the right side's the park. On the left side, we're seeing duplexes and homes here in Milwaukee, as this would be on the near north side. Once again, not that far away from downtown, but a totally different world as far as, I mean, there are no security perimeters here for the RNC. Life would go on as normal, which if you've talked to anyone who lives downtown, that is not what the case is down there with all the different changes they've dealt with. So it is a lot easier to get around these parts of town than the other part, but we're seeing what happens if there is a big incident. Suddenly you have all these law enforcement officers that the Milwaukee Police Department, or we know the Secret Service is involved, can call on to come control this scene. Manpower is not an issue here today, and now here we go. We're seeing one of these units leave.
And you can see the police vehicle behind it. Ben, there haven't been that many marked Milwaukee police cars. Often those vans, the investigative vans, will show up in these scenes for equipment. They have all sorts of things inside those vans. What you're not seeing on camera, though, several of our reporters on scene are talking with witnesses who may have heard or seen something. We've been with you live here on Fox 6 since about 2:02 this afternoon after we first learned that a Columbus, Ohio police officer shot a person in the area of 14th and Vliet. We know several city blocks there are closed surrounding King Park as authorities continue this investigation.
And I just want to go back to the point of what I saw yesterday with my own eyes with Columbus officers as I was down in the 3rd Ward, which again, during the day, very eerie during the day because not a lot of people were in the 3rd Ward. That may have changed at night when all the delegates got out. But I went into the public market and there was a group of officers from Columbus in town. It kind of seemed like they were enjoying the public market as they were kind of on patrol, but they were getting a snack and stuff. But the point I'm trying to make here with them were Milwaukee police officers. So some of these out-of-town officers presumably would have a local or several local officers with them so they know the lay of the land and know a little bit about the dynamics of some of the neighborhoods they may be driving through or even working in. So now we don't know, again, exactly where this took place in this scene. As we just learned, it probably did not take place. Oh, and then we're seeing that looks like a
sheriff's office.
Sheriff's
usually.
office. Yeah, and they would be in charge of patrolling the park. But again, I do not believe this scene happened in the park.
Right, and you make a good point, though. I mean, we don't know exactly what the Ohio officer may have been doing because the number of different patrols that the city has coordinated for the RNC is just incredible. There are officers stationed obviously within the perimeter, outside the perimeter. You saw them at the public market. The security footprint of this convention and making sure that within the perimeter is safe has been such a focus. But this is honestly, Ben, it's a stark contrast. It's a reminder that these investigations happen frequently in the city of Milwaukee, and that's when the agencies have to act. And we see here numerous agencies showing up to figure out exactly what happened. Okay,
and stick around just for a minute here, because Durante Matthews, when we're going to get some answers here in a second, because he talked to some of the witnesses, and he's just powering up his equipment now with his photojournalist, Mike Pasuik. So we're going to hear from witnesses in just a moment that our reporters are gathering that information on the scene right now. Stephanie Quirk is also down there and has been witnessing all these officers kind of continually show up. We saw the tactical team show up, immediately put on their gear very quickly, and then they kind of stood down. It makes me think that this is not currently an active scene because they didn't rush off somewhere.
The urgency level does seem to be lowering rather than raising the temperature at any rate. We do have Stephanie Quirk on scene. She arrived there just before 2 o'clock. I'm not sure if we have her at the moment. I think we do. Steph, anything that you can tell us we are not seeing on camera about this death investigation?
Well, I mean, just as you mentioned, in the past 47 minutes that we've been here on air with you as this all unfolds, the number of unmarked vehicles coming in and out of the investigation here near 17th and Vliet, or 14th and Vliet, which is just 3 blocks down. More than I can even kind of describe that we've seen. Obviously, Milwaukee police seems to be here. Those vehicles are marked, but the many unmarked vehicles coming in and out of here. Earlier, we did see a group of Milwaukee police officers appear to be gearing up or putting tactical gear on, walking in a line towards King Park, which is just where near 17th and Vliet, where much of the activity is. Once they kind of walked in that area, we did not see them because that area is blocked off, so we can't access it right now. So it's unclear where in King Park they went, or what areas they're investigating at this time. But just more police activity I've seen here at this scene than I have in many.
I'm his aunt. I think the
And we can see some of those witnesses or potentially people who have showed up to the scene. Obviously, this is a volatile moment. We know that someone was struck by gunfire from an officer from Columbus, Ohio. We can only imagine the emotions that are going into this from those who may have been impacted by this shooting. We are still also working to learn more from Milwaukee police. We have not heard from them. We have reached out from them, or to them rather, but sometimes it can take some time before we hear an official statement or any official information from Milwaukee police in a situation like this.
I can't emphasize enough how different the law enforcement world is right now in the city of Milwaukee.
Right.
I mean, they've got command posts set up. They're kind of watching every square inch. Obviously, the focus is on the area around the RNC with all the delegates and the former president in town. But again, all these resources could be used throughout the city as something happens, and the level of communication probably has never been greater, maybe in the state of Wisconsin history, for what's going on. They've prepared for these events for a very long time.
We are just hearing some new information from our producers confirming that crews inside and outside Fiserv Forum are not noticing any uptick in security presence, anything different than what has already been in place since Sunday evening. So that would indicate that this is more of an isolated incident, but obviously that the officer involved here, Columbus, Ohio, was here for the RNC, for some part of the security plan in place.
And you mentioned this, Suzanne, I'm not sure the chain of command. If an out-of-town officer shoots someone and kills someone, as is the reporting been so far, then who is the investigating agency? Because the Department of Justice handles a lot of the fatal officer-involved shootings throughout the state, not necessarily in the city. So I would assume that would have all been worked out a long time ago in the planning for the RNC with all these out-of-town officers. But that is a question we're trying to get. We're also trying to get Durante Matthews up, who just spoke with some witnesses. Do we have him yet? Okay, we're still working on his signal, so we'll keep bringing it up. But we're going to hear from him in a minute because he did talk to some witnesses, so we're hopefully going to get some more information soon. And you're seeing some people show up. You just heard that woman say, I'm an aunt of the victim. So we're going to vet that a little bit before we throw it on air. But you're seeing people show up who may believe they know someone who was involved in what happened on this street here this afternoon.
In the past 25 minutes or so, we have seen dozens of law enforcement officers kind of taking off their tactical equipment and some of them adding more back on, but not rushing around in some urgent manner. Many of them were kind of under the shade of a tree there within the park as they were taking off their gear and working to, it appeared to be, get settled to make moves somewhere. We saw a line of officers, it looked like leaving King Park, but from this vantage point, it's hard to tell exactly if they're still on scene, but usually, Ben, in these circumstances, when an officer-involved shooting has taken place, we would expect to hear from the Milwaukee police chief. This is taking place in the city of Milwaukee, but given the nature of what's happened,
and now we're seeing, looks like children are leaving that area. So as you can imagine, they may be coming, actually, I would not be surprised if they're coming from the community center. Can we get a wider shot there, guys? Because King Park's right there. There's a community center, and they've got summer programming that happens all summer long. Yeah, I think that's what's happening here. So as this incident probably unfolded, they're within the crime scene tape. They're going to keep those people secure and in place until they know everyone is safe. Hey, Stephanie Quirk, have you seen any parents show up now that we're seeing all these kids kind of walk out of this scene?
So sorry. Yeah, parents show up now that there's kids walking out of this scene. We have seen multiple community members be showing up near this area of 17th and Vliet. I believe there's parents as these kids, you can see.
Right, you can see them walking out. It would look like camp counselors or people from the community center.
Yeah.
So yeah, look at all the kids who are inside this crime scene perimeter. And look, there's another now Milwaukee Police Squad. I believe, I mean, rare incidents where we have to literally look at every squad and just make sure it's a Milwaukee Police Squad, because there's so many out-of-town law enforcement.
And that really goes for across the city right now, Ben. I mean, if you're in the 3rd Ward, you are looking at an officer from Ohio, from Illinois, from various states surrounding us. Just through driving downtown a couple days ago, there was an emergency communications sort of vehicle, U.S. government SUVs on every block outside of the secure perimeter. So there are so many parts of this security plan in place, which may play into why officers were in this area of 14th and Vliet. This is outside of the perimeter. This is a mile and a half from Fiserv Forum, where the RNC events are taking place. So why was that Columbus, Ohio officer there in the first place?
Right.
I think that will be a question that will be asked of police.
And we just got some new information, and we're going to hear from Milwaukee Police, we believe, soon, because they've just set up a media staging area.
Okay.
And so this is common on crime scenes. They will set up an area that they know that the media is set up, so when the police chief or another high-ranking law enforcement official with some information they want to confirm, they know where to find the media. So they're just telling us right now where to meet, so we're sending a crew over there. And if we needed any more really details or facts to show us that this scene has really calmed down, they would not have let all those children just walk out of the community center if they thought there was any danger still left. So despite the fact, really within the last 20, 30 minutes, we saw that tactical team run in and suit up. Obviously the temperature has lowered so much so that they're now letting a bunch of kids who were presumably in that community center get out of there and reunite with their parents. I'm not sure if they got on that school bus that we just saw. That was a school bus that just drove
We did just get some new information from the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner confirming now one adult male has died in connection to this scene at 14th and Vliet. So we know that one adult male has died. The Ohio officer from Columbus shot this person, we now know is a man, an adult male, and we know that this autopsy will take place tomorrow in Milwaukee County. This is new information just into our newsroom that is shutting down the area of the city's north side, 14th and Vliet, stretching about to 17th and Vliet. You can only imagine, Ben, what these children are experiencing, what's going through their minds. Obviously, seeing this large police presence, all of these officers' vehicles, that is an image that people don't forget.
Right, and again, we don't know where this started or what the incident is or why an out-of-town officer is involved here, but just with so many law enforcement officers available and at the ready and close by, there are more law enforcement at this scene than we would normally obviously see here in Milwaukee. The only information that we're getting from Milwaukee Police, but it is new, they're calling this a, quote, critical incident near 17th and Vliet. And so they're going to set up a media staging area there. Critical incident would be, they do call it that sometimes an officer-involved shooting would be under the umbrella of what they call a critical incident. But that's why they've shut the area down. We're waiting for some information, and hopefully soon, once that media staging area is set up, we'll have law enforcement walk up to the microphone. Suzanne, why don't you just walk us through from the beginning all the facts that we know in the order that we've learned them.
Yeah, as we let our crews kind of reset, I mean, so many of them were covering RNC events and went there as soon as we heard what was happening. The call came in sometime before 2 o'clock. We're working to get that specific time nailed down, but we know that this started with a call to 14th and Vliet, a Columbus, Ohio police officer shot and killed an adult male. We have just learned from the medical examiner that that autopsy will take place tomorrow. We could learn more about cause and manner of death. That's ultimately what the autopsy will confirm.
The first agency we've heard from is the police union representing those officers in the city of Columbus, Ohio. They have said that an officer was involved here from that department, but no officers were hurt in whatever transpired here near the area of King Park on the near north side of Milwaukee.
Milwaukee's mayor has commented about this shooting. He is actually at the RNC. We have his interview. We're working to get that for you, to get his reaction to obviously what's happened. This is a person shot and killed in the city of Milwaukee. Unfortunately, this has happened several times so far this year. This is not a new question for the mayor. But what is new about this scene is that this was seemingly not a Milwaukee police officer, a Columbus, Ohio police officer who shot and killed this person.
And again, so many law enforcement are from out of town, helping not only the RNC perimeter, and sorry, as my phone continues to buzz here with some of the sources I'm trying to work on this. But yes, 14th and Vliet is where the medical examiner office confirms that this occurred near that area. So again, we got King Park there, mile and a half from the RNC. We got a neighborhood that is right there. And we just saw there's a bunch of kids at the community center doing summer programming there. So a normal neighborhood in Milwaukee in the summer. What's not normal is the event that's taking place downtown that's brought all this law enforcement over in this giant response here.
And we are seeing so many unmarked vehicles on the scene, which could indicate some sort of a Secret Service response.
Right.
We're told that the county sheriff's office, Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office, even though this is a park, is not involved in this investigation because it appeared to have happened outside the perimeter of the park. Now, well, Ben and I have been talking about who investigates in this circumstance. If an Ohio officer shoots and kills a person in Milwaukee, who is the investigating agency? Because in situations like this that have happened in the past with Milwaukee police officers, the Wisconsin Department of Justice would then be tapped to lead the investigation. The idea being they're an independent agency and that you want officers from your own agency investigating their own, essentially.
And how are all of these agencies communicating? Well, they've been working on that for more than a year. There is a command post that is set up where you're going to have local law enforcement, federal, state, all in the same room, working together. So, despite the fact that these guys were from out of town and involved in some sort of critical incident, as the Milwaukee Police Department's calling it, all of these agencies are going to be working hopefully under one umbrella as one team to not only do the police work down at the RNC, but throughout the entire region and the entire city of Milwaukee.
And there may be a reason we don't know the answer to that question about how they communicate for safety reasons, but you would imagine with a scene of this magnitude taking place just a mile outside of RNC events that there is something in place. And we could learn that, Ben, as soon as the next hour or so. We have learned a critical incident has occurred. That's what Milwaukee Police is calling it. And the staging area has been set up, which means that the chief or some sort of assistant chief may be giving a statement here any moment now.
Yeah, and we're kind of watching the scene here. It's really come down in the temperature. So it was very active just 20 or so minutes ago, but now we're hearing, and usually Milwaukee Police, they're not going to mention where the media staging area is where you can go unless they've got a handle on things, because obviously they would normally be busy with that scene. So people we have not yet seen, we have not seen the chief of police from Milwaukee.
No assistant chiefs, I mean, that we could see from our vantage point.
There's extra law enforcement in town because of the theme of the RNC, Make America Safe Again. So there have been some high-level law enforcement types that have been in the city of Milwaukee both yesterday and today. Some just attending, not even working the scene, but that are here. So some of these agencies have some extra people here just because of the theme that's going on.
And what you're taking a look at here is the corner, I believe, of 17th and Vliet. Just to the northeast here is King Park. If you're not familiar with King Park, it has Vliet to the north, Juneau to the south, and Highland just one block south of that. This is a busy area because of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center. Live on our air, you could see numerous children and what appeared to be some sort of counselors escorting them outside of the police tape. There are also some tennis courts on scene, and from what we can tell on the map, a church is surrounding the property. There's a correctional center surrounding this property. So there are a lot of people in this proximity that may have been, or at least for now, are impacted by the closures, but may have heard something or seen something. And that's exactly what our crews are doing right now, going around trying to gather information about what people saw and heard.
This is 3 blocks away, the live picture you're looking at, from where law enforcement's telling us that this took place. So it is way down there, and they have made such a large police perimeter here, which is pretty rare in the city of Milwaukee. As someone who's been covering this for more than a decade in this city, not often you get pushed this far back from the scene. And part of the reason they're doing that, they've got the extra manpower to do it. There's a reason that sometimes the perimeters aren't that big, because if you have this huge perimeter, you got people that have to man every single street corner. Well, this is the 1 week of the year you can do that here in the city because there are literally hundreds of thousands of law enforcement in town. So no problem to make a big police perimeter here.
And Ben, you were at the public market yesterday, which a lot of people have described as a desert area at some points in the day because of all of the activity happening within Pfizer Forum. You saw Columbus, Ohio police officers there.
Right, they were inside the public market, so we knew they were in town. They were with Milwaukee police officers. Hey, this is just into the newsroom. We're finally got that sound from the mayor. Let's listen to Mayor Cavalier Johnson, his response on what's going on here.
We just got word on this day, too, that there has been an officer-involved shooting involving officers from outside of the Milwaukee area. What do you know at this point?
I'm just being told that there is an officer-involved shooting involving an outside jurisdiction here outside of the security perimeter at the RNC. I'm just getting briefed on this information at this time, so I don't really have more details than that. This is still really fresh to me.
Where do you go from here? What is your role now as you investigate, try to what happened and what the cause of all this was?
I will have conversations with police this afternoon. I'll talk to Chief Norman and others in the police department to find out more details, more information about exactly what happened.
All right, Mayor Johnson, thank you for that.
Thank you.
Okay, there you have it. The mayor just being briefed as we speak. Kind of interesting to see a Democratic mayor inside an RNC, but he's one of the hosts here of this. And now we've got someone coming down the street that looks...
So there's some sort of credential on. Not sure if that's a member of law enforcement or... Oh, that might have actually been a photographer. I think that they had their credentials for the RNC, where a lot of our crews were coming from. If you are just joining us, we are working to get some more information about the person who was shot in this incident. We know a Columbus, Ohio police officer shot and killed a man. We don't know on the record who this person was, if they're from the city of Milwaukee, or what exactly that officer was doing in the area of 17th and Vliet.
And now we're waiting for this press conference to occur. There's been a media staging area nearby. We've seen kids leaving the area, family members are outside, and it appears after this shooting that the threat has really lowered for that neighborhood because we're just seeing people finally being allowed to mill about and leave the scene. We haven't seen a lot of law enforcement leave, although this, again, is a couple blocks down where this took place. So, but, you know, with such a big response, sometimes you see a large amount of police officers show up, and then when they realize they've got it under control, you'll start seeing people leave as they go back to work and patrol other parts of the city. We
saw that live on air. We were also in a different position. So when our photographer and reporter arrived on scene, we could see those officers in their tactical gear, kind of underneath that large tree that you're seeing just beyond the red vehicles on the left-hand side of your screen. We could see those officers, but usually as the scene gets more buttoned up, the officers involved will move media to a specific location for these sort of media briefings, and it appears that's what's happened.
We have thousands of people in town for the RNC. They're about 1.5 miles away, but it is a very different world from which they are because west of the interstate, those neighborhoods are not under any sort of extra security. There's no roadblocks over there. When you start going east of the interstate, that's when it really is a different scene because there are roadblocks set up, large fences, but all these officers are nearby. So if something were to happen and they would be needed, they could come and join this scene here.
Our reporters on the scene are hearing some yelling in the area. They are talking to witnesses who may have known this victim or may have heard something, but we want to go through that before we obviously give all of that information to you to make sure that this is confirmed. But just to recap here, we know that one person was killed today in connection to this scene at 14th and Vliet. We know that an officer from Columbus, Ohio, the outside jurisdiction, shot this person who was a man. The Milwaukee County Medical Examiner's Office tells us that the autopsy on this individual will be conducted tomorrow. That is standard procedure usually for Milwaukee County to do that autopsy the next day, which can really give us crucial information about how this person died, Ben, which is usual for any sort of death investigation in the city.
Yeah, and now we're hearing from our crews on the scene. We don't want to take it live because of the language that's being spoken right now on the police perimeter. But as the temperature simmers inside the police perimeter, the temperature is rising on the outside of the perimeter. As people are showing up, word's starting to get around the neighborhood, rumors are flying, and people are not very happy. So law enforcement is trained with this. They deal with this on many crime scenes in Milwaukee, but yeah, we are seeing some shouting occurring now as people are getting frustrated as they want to know more information, and rumors are starting to fly in that neighborhood.
We are going on 1 hour of live coverage here at 14th and Vliet. Our camera is pointed, I believe, northbound toward an active police investigation where this Columbus, Ohio police officer shot and killed a man on the streets of Milwaukee. All of this taking place in King Park. This is just 1.5 miles, has been mentioned, from Pfizer Forum, but we are not saying right from our vantage point, a lot of Milwaukee police vehicles. We have seen numerous unmarked cars going in and out, which would make sense because we have learned that the Secret Service is involved here. To what extent, though, we're not sure. That could come from Milwaukee police, who appear to be giving a briefing at some point in the near future.
But look down, I mean, it just shows you how far we're being kept away from the scene and how far they've pushed people back. So you see how they've got the tape goes around that fire hydrant there. But when officers show up, the first thing they're going to want to do is make a perimeter. It is a crime scene. There is evidence that needs to be gathered, and they want to really keep people out of the area as much as possible. And as more and more law enforcement show up, they're going to push people farther and farther back so they make sure that they've got that crime scene secured so no evidence is lost or people are walking through it. And so just we are very far away, as you can see, as I believe we're looking east towards the city there.
Yes.
Hard to tell from our vantage
It is
point.
a little bit hard to tell. We're working on getting another vantage point of King Park because of how large this is. This is an area of the city where there are numerous homes, duplexes, community centers, churches, a correctional center. Highland Avenue, just 1 block south of the southernmost part of this intersection, is a busy thoroughfare right now because of the RNC. You are taking a live look here. It appears might be a fire vehicle leaving the scene. It may have been the battalion chief, I think, from Milwaukee Fire leaving the scene. That is customary, though, to see fire officials respond in emergency situations like this. So we're going to check in with them, too, to see if they could tell us anything.
And I just got some word from a photojournalist who is on scene. Mike Basuic is now reporting that the Department of Justice, the Wisconsin Department of Justice, has arrived on scene. They would presumably be the lead investigating agency. So what you'll see a lot of the law enforcement, they will close down the perimeter, close down the crime scene, and then they will wait for those lead investigators to show up and take command, especially when you're dealing with officers who are involved. They will be taken away from the scene immediately, interviewed as witnesses to what happened, and the DOJ will then go back and re-interview everybody.
I mean, you can see just a flood of cars leaving the scene. That was about 5 or 6 there in a row. Not clear which agency they were with because of their unmarked nature. Usually what we'll see in these situations, even if there's a medical examiner vehicle entering the scene, we will see, even if the DOJ is involved, Milwaukee police will still work that perimeter. So they will still be on the outskirts, making sure that that is secure. Let's take another live look, a different angle we are just getting into our newsroom.
And I'm just going to ask the director here if we know where this camera is. This is from 13th and Vliet, so new angle here, and maybe we can zoom in a little bit, but yeah, same thing. You can see how far we're being kept away because there's the perimeter. You don't see any flashing lights, and you know as you get closer to this thing, there are a lot of law enforcement on top of where this critical incident happened. And there you can see, again, a better shot of some of the Milwaukee police officers are on scene in there. So the red tape you're seeing would be the innermost perimeter many times, and the yellow tape sometimes signifies the outer perimeter.
And typically in any sort of death investigation in the city, the homicide detectives from Milwaukee police would be dispatched out to the scene to investigate, to start talking with witnesses, to get any sort of video angles, cell phone, talking with people who may have witnessed this. But because of the RNC, because of what's happening a mile away, it's unclear what their chain of command is. So because this officer was from Columbus, Ohio, who shot and killed a man, does that mean Milwaukee police will take precedence here? It appears to be, because they sent out a news release, that they'll be giving an update, so they will be the lead agency for now, but then it would be turned over to the DOJ.
And we have a state law in the state of Wisconsin that came several years ago, because if you had an officer-involved shooting, you don't want a homicide detective from the same agency investigating their own officers, because they're trying to eliminate bias here. So in the Milwaukee County area, there's a multi-agency group that's put together to make sure that if an officer-involved shooting happens, that a different agency would then be investigating. And outside the Milwaukee metro area, the Department of Justice handles that. So let's say in Dodge County something were to happen, you wouldn't have a Dodge County investigator investigating that scene. You would go to the state agencies to bring this outside agency to conduct that. So that is what we're seeing, because we're seeing the DOJ show up here, but we've never seen this really before, because we got an out-of-state officer who presumably was here to help Milwaukee police because of the RNC happening in town, and it has become involved in this shooting here on the near north side. So this is kind of unknown territory for a lot of us. But this would have been a scenario that they have talked about before this happened, as they've been talking about all the different scenarios that could be happening. We continue also for that Milwaukee police briefing that should happen soon, we are told. The only information we have from Milwaukee police right now is that there is a media staging area. They have told the media to go there, and they're calling this a critical incident. So let's get back, take this shot full here, and see if we can zoom in here. 13th and Vliet, near north side, mile and a half from the RNC. Just this afternoon, shots rang out, and all of these law enforcement agencies show up to the scene. Here's what we do know. An out-of-town officer from the city of Columbus, Ohio, was involved. One adult man is dead, and now this huge scene has appeared, and we saw all these out-of-town officers come to the scene. We know there's many resources now for investigators that are here because of the RNC being in town. So the Secret Service, extra personnel in town for them, they're on scene. We've also seen the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office helping with the patrolling near King Park, although we do not believe this took place just outside of the park. So the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office is not involved, but they are helping with the perimeter. And you can see just how many officers. It would be rare to see this many officers on street duty. Look how many officers are just making sure that the street is blocked off right here. And this is the scene that we did see the DOJ just show up. This is the entrance they had. But look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 officers right here, and their job primarily right now is to make sure that nobody goes in or out of that crime scene. That's a very rare scene here in Milwaukee at a crime scene. But there are just so many resources in town, so many personnel that have come from all around the country because of the RNC that's freeing up officers to be able to do this work, that they're not being rushed around to another scene. So, and here we see, that looks like a tactical officer there on the left. We do know, and I'm trying to get confirmation, we're going to try and reach out to the Park and Recreation Department, because we do know there was appeared that there was summer programming happening in King Park. The good news is we just saw about 24 kids walk out. They looked like they were fine. But in any normal crime scene investigation, they're going to try and shut down the whole block. They're going to keep everybody, for safety reason, indoors. So we know those kids, just for the safety reasons, they were kept inside. So just as you're seeing on your screen here, large, heavy police presence. And we're seeing, we do know a person was shot by a Columbus, Ohio police officer. And that has now been confirmed by the police union in Ohio that represents that officer. They tell us that no other officers were injured in this incident that took place. We've seen the medical examiner show up from Milwaukee County, and they say this man was shot near 14th and Vliet, an adult male, and they've arrived on scene. Now, we also know that we're just seeing such a large police presence. And again, this is a mile and a half to 2 miles from Fiserv Forum. So as the RNC is taking place, this is what's occurring on the near north side. And we have seen the temperature rising and looks like it's gone back down again as people arrive to the scene looking for information, pretty heated, as there are rumors flying in the neighborhood, and they're pretty angry that they have not heard from any law enforcement about what happened. But that could change in a few minutes here. I want to bring in Mary Stoker-Smith. It's very unusual, Mary, to see this many officers on a scene, even though this is a critical incident in Milwaukee. Just so many agencies are here.
Absolutely, and as you and Suzanne have underscored throughout our coverage now, obviously things are at a heightened sense of awareness because of the Republican National Convention here in town, but obviously after the events that unfolded on Saturday, experts, of course, are telling us officials will be abundantly cautious in terms of trying to secure perimeters and secure areas and make sure that there is no threat to the public. You can imagine right now if you're in one of those homes or you're trying to get home to that area, perhaps you're just getting off work, and you're seeing this and you're thinking, boy, what is going on? Obviously, those officials are trying to make sure there's no threat to the community right there in that area of Vliet. As you said, we are seeing such a heavy police presence. We're not used to such a police presence, for something like this. So
I was just saying, I don't think we've ever had, in the state of Wisconsin, I think it's fair to say there have never been this many police, law enforcement resources in one place in the state at a given time. So they are well situated for something like this to happen. But what is so unique about this, we've never had an out-of-town police officer working with Milwaukee police come into town and be involved in a critical incident like this. So they got to work on the chain of command and who's in charge of investigating that officer. And they're saying this looks like possibly some detectives.
Detectives working the scene. Yeah, I was in touch with sources just a couple of minutes ago, and they are saying that, because of the severity of all this and because it was an outside officer right now, the Secret Service will come in and do some investigating on their own. Normally this would be covered perhaps by, with the outskirts of the park, Milwaukee County Sheriff's Office and the Milwaukee Police Department. But at this point, with everything going on, the Secret Service here is taking a lead in investigating this and making sure that everything is done obviously by the book here. We see those officers looking, obviously, they look like detectives to go to get information on exactly what has been handled here. But as you mentioned, Ben, because a death has been involved and this was an outside agency, a member of the Ohio Police Department, that this is not going to be done. It's protocol that it would be done by an outside agency.
And we've seen the DOJ show up, so presumably they'd be the agency in charge, but we'll find out more when Milwaukee police presumably speak soon here. Hey, I want to show you some video 45 minutes ago just to show you how different the scene is now from what it was then. Look here. So you see some of the officers, these are the bicycle cops, and moments later we saw a tactical team run up to this area and throw on their gear. And there you can see they were working the park. Now this area that we believe the shooting happened in 14th and Vliet. So it did not take place, even though all this video is happening that you're seeing now in the park, it just shows you the flood of law enforcement. They were all over that area. And we just saw those detectives walk up. Presumably they're going to talk to as many people as they can. What did you hear? What did you see? And you're like, wait, they didn't show up in a car. They may have been working the scene outside. Someone may have called them and said, hey, I saw this or that. And they're going to talk to as many people who saw this as possible. But look, because of how big the scene is, and Mary, you know that area, there's a lot of houses up and down that side of the park, and all these people are kind of stuck in this giant criminal crime scene right now, and they got to stay put until they're told what they can do.
Exactly. So they're going to probably say, we're cordoning off this area. And obviously, as I just mentioned, for people coming home right now or people wanting to get out, presumably, if you do have to go to work, if you do have to run an errand, if you do have an appointment, you're not going to be able to get through that area, at least for the time being. We just see, such an intense swarm of law enforcement there looking for any information and gathering evidence, too, to make sure that everything is done by the books, done properly. We do have some video from earlier in the day. If you're just joining us now and want to get up to speed, we want to show you the beginning of this, if we can get that video going, of how all this unfolded. And that's the King Park right there, as you see there. When all of this went down at 17th and Vliet right there, the immediate police response, we had heard that there was a shooting. We knew that there was an outside agency involved, and we knew that one person was dead. Initially, we didn't know if the officer was hurt. Right now, we are having unconfirmed sources tell us that the officer was not hurt, was not injured, but one person is dead after this shooting that happened just a short time ago.
Okay, let's go back to that live picture, guys, and show you what's happening now. As we're seeing here, you can see the heated the temperature's gone down inside the crime scene, but you can see the temperature's still hot on the outside. As people are asking questions, these officers are not going to know. They're just working the street, and they're going to know just as much as we do here on air, because the people who work the outside of the perimeter, they were not on the inside of the perimeter when this happened, just the way that these scenes unfold. So, but you can see law enforcement, they're used to this when they show up to crime scenes. Sometimes things can get heated. And we have seen people coming and going from different points of the perimeter. But you can see how many blocks down. I mean, that's 1, 2 blocks down from our camera, and how far they've made this perimeter, as well as that whole block. And you're seeing, okay, again, you see the red tape? Everything inside of that would be, and is that? Okay, there, we're getting a better zoom there. I was trying to see what that was in the street there.
Well, those look like the evidence markers right there, Ben.
Okay, that's the first time we're seeing the evidence markers. Okay, so there we go. There's the crime scene. Guys, I don't want to get too close because I think that might be the victim on the other side there. So sometimes that will block evidence, but yeah, we just saw the crime scene markers. Okay, so we were wondering, where did this occur? And we do know, you can see the evidence markers right in the middle of the street there. I believe we're on Vliet here, looking down.
Yeah, but you saw those two.
Oh, 13th, sorry. This is 13th we're looking up and down near Vliet.
So those 2 yellow evidence markers right there, and obviously that'll be the center of investigation right there. But yeah, you got to be careful sometimes on what we're seeing.
Yeah, we don't know.
We don't know what.
Yeah, we don't know. We know the medical examiner has showed up, but if they got to wait for an outside agency to arrive, and they're going to keep everything as is until they can get in, take their pictures and videos, get a good look at it. But I will say, I might be wrong on that because we're not seeing a lot of people around that scene there, but you can see everything. So that red tape that you're seeing on your screen, everything on the inside of that would be the closest to where this occurred, and the yellow tape would be the outside perimeter as they try and push people back. But yeah, that's our best look at it that we've had so far. As you can see, some of the investigators are now showing up. Some of these guys may be detectives, and some may be there to preserve the crime scene as we're seeing it. I say crime scene as in this was an officer-involved shooting. We're not sure exactly how this unfolded or what occurred, and we're hopefully going to hear they have created a media staging area, and so hopefully we get some more information from Milwaukee Police soon.
And if you're wondering if that is within the perimeter, there is just about a mile from the RNC security perimeter there. So right now we are seeing all those law enforcement descend on that, of course, on that area. We did see those 2 evidence markers right there. See that truck going on there. And right now, again, as we mentioned, the medical examiner's office has been called, dispatched to the scene. We have been told that there are reports of a deceased adult male. We do not know the age. We do not know the motive here. We do not know if this man is even from Milwaukee.
Well, actually, Mary, I'm going to cut you off there because I just got some new information. This is now confirmed both from the Milwaukee Street Angels, who are an outreach agency for homeless individuals in the city, as well as family members. We're learning that the person who was shot by this officer from Columbus, Ohio, was a man who was homeless. So we've now been able to confirm that from multiple sources, including the Street Angels. And Mary, you know the work the Street Angels do.
Oh,
they
yes.
go all around town giving food, clothing, hygiene products to the homeless individuals throughout our city, and they have a personal relationship with a lot of these people because they help them on a daily basis. So they have now been able to confirm with us that the individual who was shot and killed here by law enforcement was someone who was homeless, and family members telling us that as well. And we're hearing from some people in the neighborhood who say this was an individual known in the neighborhood.
Yes.
So they wouldn't necessarily know his name, but they knew him. He lived nearby.
Just seeing that report now, we of course are not going to report who this individual may be. We do have some insider information that yes, this is somebody known to be in that area. It is reportable by the Street Angels, yes, that this was a homeless man right now. Family members have been in touch, have been notified. Again, what we don't know, however, is anything surrounding that. What may have been the motive? What may have happened?
So what I can tell you, with the RNC happening so close, it's hard not for your brain when you hear major critical police response happening a mile and a half from Fiserv Forum to think that it's an event connected to that. And the more information we're learning here, it does not appear that that this is directly RNC related. What I will tell you is it is very unique for us to have out-of-town officers patrolling our streets. So we do know that a Columbus, Ohio officer is the one who fired the fatal shots here. And so we're going to try and learn if that was someone who was patrolling the area with Milwaukee police or why that individual was here.
And what could have happened there? What could have unfolded? Was there a perceived threat by that police officer that made him fire his weapon? Again, we don't know the circumstances surrounding that, but obviously that heightened sense of security and that close, about a mile away from the RNC perimeter, you know, as we have said, there's such a saturation there of officers. Again, we don't know what that perceived threat would have been.
Our reporters have been able to talk to some of the people you're seeing, and we're seeing some of the screaming and the anger that is there. Some of these people are family members, they tell us, of the individual who was shot and killed, and they're waiting for answers. So as that painful moment when you don't know what happened or occurred, you want some information, and so obviously you're seeing, and we've cut the audio here on purpose because of the language that's being said right now. But obviously a heated moment happening here at 13th. As we look at the scene, as they've now secured this perimeter, as investigators continue to work.
And the man that we just saw, we don't know if that's just a resident there, a local resident wondering what's going on, perhaps upset that he can't get to where he needs to go because of this. It could be a family member of the victim, somebody who knew that person, as you had mentioned, a well-known person. We don't know at this point. We are not able to get any closer to that. Right now, you're looking at those two evidence markers right there as our camera had zoomed in and zoomed out. And that will be a key source to investigators to determine exactly what happened, when it may have happened, exactly where that bullet may have entered the victim. So substantial in their investigation.
I saw the number 26. Doesn't always work this way, but sometimes they start with a 1, 2, 3. Sometimes it could be a bullet casing, but really those evidence markers will be anything that would not have been there before this happened and is there now or could be pertinent to the investigation. So it doesn't mean there were 26 bullet casings by any means, but it does mean that a lot of evidence markers near this area, as you're seeing 2 of them right there, and that would be placed down by the first detectives to arrive on scene as they try to really control the scene to make sure no evidence is lost, and they'll take as many pictures as possible so it's undisturbed. And that is why they're keeping people so far away, make sure nobody walks through that area or moves anything, even accidentally. I've seen it before where people have walked through and kicked something that is a critical piece of evidence.
Right. And also you want to contain this scene. I mean, the last thing that the police want right now is any more violence. They don't want anything to be incited right now. If this is indeed a well-known community member, emotions run high, people unsure of what's going on, particularly based on the climate right now after what we saw on Saturday, and we see all this police presence. It can be a little disconcerting. So these people who live in this area, they want to make sure that everybody is safe. They want to make sure that they contain that environment, keep things peaceful, and just keep residents in there as safe as possible. They don't want to see this spilling out, particularly as this is so close to the RNC, just about a mile out of that perimeter.
We have been told from the officers union, this is a member of the Columbus, Ohio Police Department. I will tell you, when I was down in the 3rd Ward yesterday, I went into the public market and there was a large group from Columbus, Ohio. But here's what's interesting. There were Milwaukee police officers with them. So presumably when some of these out-of-town officers are patrolling or they're in their groups, they don't know this town. They're seeing this for the first time. There are local officers who are with them, presumably. We don't have that information confirmed exactly what happened here today. Right. I can confirm that was the scene yesterday, as a lot of these, and it was interesting. I mean, it's a different scene down as you get close to the RNC. I've never seen that many police officers, but they're different groups from different areas, all from out of state, some from California, I believe. And many from our surrounding states that are here. And as they are walking around, helping out the Milwaukee Police Department, both at the RNC and presumably outside the perimeter to help us just with our day-to-day policing, that there are some local officers with them because, again, they don't know the lay of the land. They don't know the certain dynamics in certain neighborhoods.
Well, and you bring up a good point. I was at an event in Bronzeville just a couple hours ago, and there was a saturation of Secret Service there because of the interview that I was conducting, and as well as Milwaukee police and, you know, police from other agencies, because, again, you get to an area where you're not familiar with. There are so many nooks and crannies, if you will. You do need somebody to kind of give you the lay of the land, and you never know where some of these people who are from out of town, people who need Secret Service, may be traveling through. They may be traveling around those areas. So you're right, you have multiple layers of agencies, and they need a little bit of direction right there. Obviously, they are making sure that they collect as much evidence as needed. They're getting as much information as we see the police out there, law enforcement.
Do you see how they move that patrol car? That normally is for us. There's
Right.
something that they don't want us to see on the other side of there.
And that could be beneficial. You know, if
honestly, yeah.
As we had mentioned, if there was the victim laying there, we certainly don't need to show that, nor should we.
I believe that's a state patrol that officer
It
that's
looks-
taking. They've got the distinct hats, right?
hat, right.
And that tells me, because we were wondering, okay, out-of-state officer involved in something critical here in the city. What's the chain of command? Who takes over this? We did see the Department of Justice come in, and now we're seeing the State Patrol taking pictures on scene. To me, I would not be surprised if they're the ones who are going to handle this as the lead agency investigating what happened today.
Yeah, that's what it would seem. And as I mentioned, it seems as though the Milwaukee County Sheriff's Department is not going to be a part of this, MPD as well. So outside agencies, obviously they're going to work in tandem, but they would be taking the lead on this. We just see a lot of people, looks like probably witnesses perhaps, maybe people in that area.
I know who that person is there. That's the Street Angels right there.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, Ava, I believe.
Maybe being questioned about who that could be and consoling.
And again, we've now
somebody
confirmed Durante Matthews on scene too, and there you see that's on the left. That's, I believe, someone from the Street Angels. But we've confirmed from that organization, which helps so many people who are unhoused in our community with food, clothing, assistance, hygiene products. That is someone that they knew, someone that they call them their clients. So it was someone who was homeless in that area that they're familiar with. And we can see police walking with that person. So there's be people with some information that's pertinent to what happened before this happened and what led up to this.
And that'll be the key, Ben. That will be the key. Exactly what was the catalyst? Was there a perceived threat? If this was an officer just doing general patrol, what set it off? You know, was it mistaken? Was it a credible threat? Again, we don't know at this point.
I was saying just how unique this is. Okay, this is the outside of the perimeter. Not uncommon to show up to a homicide scene per se in Milwaukee and you see one officer blocking the street or two officers just because of the resources that the Milwaukee Police Department has. Look how many officers here, and presumably a lot of these people's job is just to block the scene and make sure nobody goes there. 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, there's 6 people in your shot right now that literally their only job right now for a lot of these people is to make sure nobody gets through, the crime scene remains untouched, and it just shows how many law enforcement are in town right now that we're able to do this.
Well, in fact, I'm looking at a list here. I mean, when you look at this list, this extensive list of the law enforcement, we have California, D.C., Florida, Illinois, Kentucky, Maryland. And we talked about security was already going to be tight for obviously the number of people, the volume of people coming for the Republican National Convention. However, you had the events that unfolded in Pennsylvania on Saturday. And now we're not going to say a number, but I'm just being flippant here by saying that could have been doubled. We know that there were going to be extra layers of security after the assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump's life. So there were even more coming, you know, perhaps even last minute. Hey, are you available to go to Milwaukee tomorrow?
Right.
You know, the calls that probably came in on Saturday night.
There are a lot of officers from the state of Ohio in Milwaukee right now. 7 different agencies as I'm looking. Obviously Columbus, who is involved in this, but also Cleveland, the Trumbull County Sheriff's Office, Tulsa, Oklahoma, so I've gone past the list here, Cincinnati, Akron, Ohio. So the biggest cities in Ohio have sent some of their officers. Not uncommon. This happens at every convention. This will happen in Chicago. I'm sure there will be lots of officers from the state of Wisconsin down helping patrol the streets and the area for Chicago for the Democratic National Convention. So that's not unheard of to bring all these officers in for the extra security. And this obviously is a nightmare scenario for any town agency. You want to help make these streets safer. You don't want to be involved in a critical incident that you're now tied up in and dealing with all the questions that we're going to have about how this works. Would that person be allowed to leave town? I'm not sure how this works.
Well, one of the other things I'm sure people who live in and around that area could be wondering, how am I going to get home? How am I going to get out? Are people in that area, my neighbors, my families, my friends, are they secure? One of the things we need to know is exactly when those areas, if anytime soon they're going to be opened up for people traveling. I mean, pretty soon people are going to be getting home from work. You got second, third shifters like us who may need to leave for work. So that's one of the questions we want to get answered is what areas are off limits? How can that area, what's the go around? What's the rerouted direction for traffic? And maybe right now that's just a no-fly zone, if you will. Nobody's getting out, nobody's coming in that area as police continue to investigate.
Can I tell you just a street perspective of the city of Milwaukee right now? It's a tale of two worlds because everything near downtown, we've seen some streets are a nightmare. You go on Water Street, you get near that soft perimeter. We've seen people stuck in lines trying to get close to the RNC. You go just outside that, I literally went from here, our Brown Deer station, hugged the lake, down along the lakefront. I got into the third ward in record time.
It's a
there was no one out there. And the streets were easy and to get through. So these streets, presumably, granted, 2 miles, it sounds, from your mind, you're thinking 2 miles from the RNC, it sounds so close. But really, everything west of the freeway, it's business as usual as far as the roads. None of the roads are blocked off. Some of the interstate on-ramps may be. But this area is not going to be gridlocked from RNC traffic because it really has been contained to downtown and some of the highway where the buses are coming in.
Well, yeah, we're just kind of looking there right now as police continue to investigate. Presumably, they are going to be talking to witnesses. We've seen that a little bit earlier right now, but they're going to be looking for people to talk to about exactly what happened, what could have led up to this, what did they see. And, you know, these days everybody's got a camera. Everybody's got a cell phone. So you can better believe they are scouring cell phone video of somebody who took something and perhaps surveillance video from nearby businesses as we see there, maybe even ring cams from people who have one on their house right now. That's going to be central in this investigation. In terms of body cams and other police gear right now, that's another topic. But right now they want to talk to those residents. Most times people in these particular incidences have seen something and the immediate knee-jerk reaction these days, pull out your camera and start recording. So there will be a lot of evidence gathered here.
They're putting up more crime scene
tape here. And you wonder why they're doing that particular area, Ben. Like, what is why is that central right there that they want to just cordon that area off?
I will tell you, sometimes when they do the investigation, they think they've got everything contained to a certain area, and suddenly they find, whoa, wait a second, maybe this actually started a little further back than we thought. And again, they're trying to make sure everything remains untouched, undisturbed. I will say, what's the point of putting the police tape up when we know further down the street there's more police tape up?
Exactly.
Nobody's going to get in there anyway, unless they're going to actually shrink. That could be what's happening. They may actually shrink the perimeter.
So they can open up some of those streets.
Yeah, and so let some of these neighbors leave their homes or get out of their driveways, no problem. Because, like we talked about this, very large perimeter they set up around this scene. So maybe they're setting up a kind of an inner perimeter so they can open up some of the streets.
Yeah. Let's recap what we know so far, because in a couple minutes we're going to take a break here and regroup. And if you're just joining us right now, we want to let you know exactly what's going on. This is still a very, very big development, breaking news, developing scene here. Earlier this afternoon, you see the area right there at 4th and Vliet. That's just about 2 miles from the perimeter of Pfizer Forum. Police officers responded, a large group of police officers responded to a shooting. We know that the medical examiner was called out. We know that an adult male was killed. We do know that that adult male, according to members of the Street Angels, was a homeless man. We do know he was fired upon by an officer with the Ohio Police Department. We do not know the motive. We do not know what incited that. We do know the officer, at this point, at least did not sustain any serious injuries.
Yeah, and actually we've been told from his police union in Columbus, Ohio, that no officers were injured in this incident and that the individual killed was the only one
injured.
who was hurt and killed, obviously, in this situation. Law enforcement, they were all safe. Hearing that from the police union. And now another live shot is we're seeing that could be a Secret Service vehicle.
Could be,
or
at least, yeah.
there are a lot of agencies right now driving around in dark vehicles, unmarked. But and I always wonder this, when a vehicle who shows up to a police perimeter, they're always very quick to know who they are to let them in.
Right.
So there we could see another Sometimes medical examiner drives in vehicles similar to this, but this looks more, unclear who that is.
Could be, members of the Secret Service down there, investigating.
Yeah.
But clearly, we've seen more and more a tape going off. And as you said, though, Ben, that could be a shrunken perimeter. That could be that they're kind of trying to contain that, as we did see those shell casings, those evidence markers, presumably by shell casings, out on the street there.
Look how many media members are here, too. Just to show you how unique this is, Red Cross is here. They help with helping people deal with a traumatic situation. But look how many media members have come over because it's so close to Fiserv Forum, and I'm sure people are wondering, does this have anything to do with the RNC? You better just go over and
Just
check
to be
it out.
safe,
So,
right,
all right,
exactly.
so we're going to keep following this coverage right now, Fox Local, and we're going to be right back after a quick break. Don't go anywhere.
Welcome back to this breaking news. If you've been following us here at Fox 6, we have been covering this story of this shooting at 17th and Vliet. Here's what we know. A homeless man was shot dead, an adult male. We don't know the age quite yet. We haven't confirmed that. Earlier today by an officer out of Ohio. We do not know the motive. We do not know if this was connected to the Republican National Convention. This is outside of the perimeter of the RNC, just about a mile out, a little bit more than a mile out. We do not know if it was related to that. Right now, police have saturated that area. This is a little bit less, Ben, than we have seen a little earlier today. When we started our coverage just a short time ago this afternoon, there was a huge saturation of officers, MPD officers initially, Milwaukee County Sheriff's officers from out of state. We see there right now people probably being able to go into their homes and then just getting back out. A large area right now has been cordoned off as police continue to investigate, place evidence markers, probably look for shell casings and perhaps what went down in the moments leading up to this fatal shooting.
And you're saying, I mean, these look like they're neighbors in the neighborhood. Oftentimes, this has now been going on 2 hours. And so you'll be like, can I get to my car? But everything has to be escorted. So you're seeing a Milwaukee police officer escorting them to their vehicle. We've heard from the police union in Columbus, Ohio, saying their officer was involved, but no officers were injured here. I'll tell you from my experience of being down in the 3rd Ward yesterday, ran into a very large group from Columbus, Ohio, and they were with some Milwaukee police officers, and presumably as the work occurs throughout the city and down by the RNC, you'd have groups of out-of-state officers, maybe with a few local officers to show them the ropes. Again, we don't know where this started or what occurred, but the latest we're hearing is from the Street Angels. That is an organization that helps those who are unhoused in our community with housing, food, hygiene products, and they get very close to a lot of the people that they help, call them their clients. They say they know this individual, and they got word of what happened, that person was shot and killed on the streets in Milwaukee today. So they're at the scene. We're also hearing from some people who say there are family members that have arrived. I will say the temperature comes and goes, but it has been very heated along the police perimeter as some people have showed up and they start shouting, angry, looking for some answers.
Exactly. And you could imagine this heightened sense of security after what happened on Saturday out of Pennsylvania with the assassination attempt of former President Donald Trump. We were told at that time, before the RNC even took place, we knew there was going to be a heightened sense of security. That changed the game on Saturday. And so now you're even looking at more security, more awareness, people being vigilant, and we know that. The man who has been identified, we of course are not going to do that at this point, but we've been told by several family members who this person is, who was shot and killed by police. Again, so many questions though surrounding what may have led up to that. Was there a perceived threat? Was there some type of interaction, altercation? We don't know. At this point, we're still piecing this breaking news together. We do know a large area, as you saw there, has been cordoned off. This is another area of that scene. People trying to get home from work, people perhaps leaving to go somewhere, leaving to go to work, are obviously going to have to be taking an alternate route. But if you do know somebody in this area that lives around near, maybe works near 17th and Vliet, and they're not watching this, give them a heads up. You're going to have to take a different route. But there is just that large police presence. We have not been told that there is any threat to the community right now. We don't want to cause panic. Police, of course, are going to do their job to secure that area and make sure that everything is safe for people who live, who work in that area, and who may be involved in that area walking the streets.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say the danger's over. I'll tell you why. So this is 17th and Vliet. Can we go back to that live shot, guys, at 17th and Vliet? I want to show you here because we're about 3 blocks away from where this took place at 14th and Vliet, just to tell you the size of the police perimeter. You see that there on the right? That is a community center in the park, and live on air, we witnessed looked like a couple dozen kids that were taken out of the building and allowed to leave, and they would not let anybody walk out of that building if they thought there was a danger. But it was clearly locked down for a bit, as what I'm sure was a very scary situation for those kids occurred outside, although some of those community members that, camp counselors and groups that run these, they're pretty good about keeping the kids inside and not letting them know what's happening outside if that's what they need to do. So, and I'll tell you, the kids didn't look distraught or anything. They looked like they were kids just leaving camp for the day when we saw them leave here on screen. But just so your bearings, that is King Park, right there, community center, and 3 blocks down the street is where those took place. And we're seeing so many law enforcement come and go. There's another, can we zoom in? Is that, what kind? I think that's Milwaukee police. We have to look. I mean, we have so many out-of-town law enforcement. We had an officer from Columbus, Ohio, fire his gun and kill somebody here today, that every time a police vehicle leaves, you kind of have to look at it and say, what town are you from?
Which one is that? Yeah, coming into the station today, I had to look and say, where is that little town? When I'm looking at the list here of the out-of-state agencies, when you look at Ohio itself, you have 7 different agencies, if I'm counting this right. Maybe 8 just from Ohio, and that doesn't include Tennessee, Oklahoma, Oregon, North Carolina, Minnesota. So a large saturation there of officers. And we saw cars earlier, Ben, that you mentioned that could be the Secret Service. We have been told off the record that they may be involved in this investigation.
And I don't know if some of the out-of-town officers are actually riding in Milwaukee Police Squad cars, because I'll tell you, when I was downtown in the 3rd Ward, granted, most of the officers I saw down there were on bicycles or horses or foot, but I didn't see any really out-of-agency vehicles. And we do know, according to the police chief, before this big event started with the RNC, he said the service for the city of Milwaukee was not going to lower. And why is that? Because they have hundreds, even thousands of officers who have come here both to help with the RNC, but also help do the everyday things. If there's a burglary or something, and you call police, you expect someone to show up.
Right. And you bring up a good point. This is outside of the perimeter, but again, it's so close to the perimeter that you wonder, obviously they had a few more officers there, a larger saturation than would normally be. And again, you just kind of wonder what incited all of this. There's so many speculations out there right now. We just don't know. But we are working with sources, working with law enforcement to try to get you agencies, all the agencies to try to get you information. See members of the Red Cross right there. They're usually first on the scene to help people, aid people, if nothing else for their psychological comfort right now, to know that people are out there right now. Oftentimes there will be chaplains through this area. We did see, of course, the Milwaukee County Medical Examiner on the scene there as well a little bit earlier.
And his vest says chaplain, and honestly, it's great to see these guys. Why? Because we saw the temperature from the people on the outside of the perimeter, and these can be very emotional scenes, and I mean, you can see some of the anger. These guys are seeing on the screen, the fact they're doing nothing, that's a good thing. They are experts at calming the situation down, talking to people, because you see those guys on the outside of the perimeter, they don't know what happened. They were not involved in the scene, but they're wearing a law enforcement badge and a shirt, and they're going to be the people that are going to get yelled at. So sometimes it helps to have people just to calm the energy, calm everybody down.
The last thing they want is to have anything escalate. After a shooting like that, as you mentioned, emotions run high. It's a hot day out there. They don't want anything to spill over. They certainly don't want to have anything spill over into other neighborhoods. So it's good, if you will, they're keeping the temperature down there, at least emotionally, from having anything else pop off tonight.
It was interesting. We did hear from Mayor Cavalier Johnson. Granted, it's an RNC. He was down there at Fiserv Forum doing media hits, and he was sitting down with our Ted Perry and Stephanie Grady shortly after this. He was briefed on the situation, and all he could tell us was he was informed that an out-of-state officer that we've since learned is from Columbus, Ohio, shot and killed somebody, and that was all the information he knew, and was trying to gather information like us as it had just unfolded.
We are keeping an eye on the scene right there. We are talking to, obviously, people are being interviewed right there, witnesses. As I mentioned earlier, you can believe that authorities are asking people for cell phone video. These days, everybody's got one of these, and our knee-jerk reaction is to pull it out and record. We don't know if there's any recordings out there, but you can better believe that law enforcement is asking people for that. We also have a lot of businesses in that area. What surveillance video is going to show exactly what could have happened, and also maybe ring cams, what people saw from their porches, what people heard. Everything is going to be looked at because of the heightened sense of awareness right now, but also with all of these law enforcement agencies on scene in that area near 17th and Vliet right there.
The home security systems have really changed the game for law enforcement. Remember the days when you wanted a home security system and you're like, you must have the fanciest house on the block because it can cost thousands and thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Now you go online, you can buy a camera for 25 bucks, got Wi-Fi, and boom.
And they're good.
And honestly, it's very rare now when we cover critical incidents in the city where there's not some sort of video. Oftentimes people will have it and they don't want to share it, but they've got it because it seems like everybody not only has this for if something happens in front of you, but also so many cameras on buildings now that obviously that it would be part of this investigation, that you're seeing all these detectives and all the investigators show up, and they're going to what they call canvass the neighborhood. They're going to do old school door knocking, and they're going to go piece by piece, and they're going to look up. If they see a camera on a building, they're going to mark it down and make sure they talk to the person who owns that camera and try and get that footage. So they will presumably have a better picture than they would have back in the day where, I mean, something happened, nobody saw it. So, and again, look at the resources we have in town here. All these officers whose job that we're seeing is just to secure the perimeter. Several blocks. We've been on homicide scenes. They're not usually this big.
No.
And the reason is because they don't have the manpower to block off several blocks. I mean, every street needs tape and somebody watching it.
Right.
But with all the resources we have in town, look at all the officers on just one street corner here on 13th and Vliet who are able to block the area. That is not a normal day here in Milwaukee.
And they're going to want to keep things away from the RNC. You know, you wonder if this will be a topic of discussion tonight, but they don't want anything infiltrating into that area. This is outside the perimeter of the RNC, albeit very close, but they're going to want to make sure that nothing is going to be spilling over into that area tonight. You can better believe it.
And you see those officers just on the other side, I believe, is where the park is. The red tape, that would be where the critical incident occurred. That is the closest area that the investigators are really zooming in on. The yellow tape oftentimes represents crowd control, and you can see the several layers. They're going to keep moving back people as far as they can. We're seeing more movement, and I believe that is more crime scene investigators. I think that tool in his hand is one of those cameras that will take, they're going to take pictures of everything. And you see that hat there? I believe that is a state patrol officer, which would, to me, tell me that the Department of Justice would be the lead investigators. If you're wondering, well, hey, I don't see any Milwaukee police detectives out there, or I don't see, obviously you wouldn't see someone from the Columbus, Ohio Police Department in our neck of the woods running the investigation, but whoever the outside agency is, they're going to kick everybody else out. They're the outsiders. They weren't here at the time that this happened. They know very little of the facts right now, and they're going to go from ground zero and learn them as they can. As you can see, another neighbor has walked out, and again, from the park on, there's apartments there. On the other side, duplexes and houses. So a lot of people live in this area, too.
Absolutely. And probably people wondering with all that congestion, how are they going to get home? Are they even allowed to drive even close to that area to get back in that home? We saw that one gentleman. You and I have been at enough scenes like this. We're usually able to get a little bit closer. And so that tells you, again, this heightened sense of security because of the proximity to the RNC. But it also it could be because of potentially gathering evidence. They want to know exactly what went down there. What was the catalyst for this shooting today? What happened? And so I'm sure they're going to be talking to people right there. We see a woman, looks like probably being able to go back into her home. But for these people who are coming home tonight, just seeing this incident and not being able to get to their home right now, disconcerting. And it will be interesting to see how long this area will be cordoned off for them to not be able to go down their street and get to where they usually park or where they live or where they work. And
again, we're hearing from the street angels in Milwaukee telling us that the person killed was one of their clients. That's what they refer to the people that they help out there on the streets of Milwaukee who don't have a home and need help. So the way that their organization works, they run around to different spots all throughout the city where it's known that there are groups of people who are unhoused live, and they often know these people by their first names. They've been amazing, sometimes helping law officers. Sometimes people pass away and have been unidentified, and suddenly they're known by the street angels because they have such good relationships with the people that they help. So they say, they're telling Fox 6, this is someone that they know, that they've helped and they work with. We're also hearing from some people who say they're family members also confirming that with us tonight.
If you're away from your TV and you're just joining us now, we put this bullet point up right here, this graphic that you see, because we know this is a lot to digest. We know this is a lot to take in on this breaking news situation. There it is from start to finish. Take a look at that. We have been told by the sources the person shot was a homeless man. Family members have confirmed that. He was shot by a police officer from Columbus, Ohio. The medical examiner was called to that area that we've been showing you near 14th and Vliet. We have been told that no Ohio officers were hit, no other injuries reported. A large area has been blocked off, as you've been showing you, between 14th and Vliet, just about 2 miles from the Pfizer Forum perimeter there of the RNC. There was a large saturation, one of the biggest saturations of police I've ever seen in my time here in Milwaukee, initially converging on this area. It was a mixture of different police, local and of course national, and presumably members of the Secret Service also there with such a close proximity to the RNC to start the investigation on this area.
And there's a working command post somewhere in the city of Milwaukee right now where all these agencies are sitting in the same room together, and as they're getting all the information from all the things happening all throughout the city of Milwaukee, both at the RNC and beyond, all is going into that room, and all these different agencies, if they hear a Columbus police officer just fired his weapon at somebody and a person has been killed, all those agencies are all sitting next to each other, and they're all presumably going to send people together to help with the investigation, clear the scene, figure out what happened here. We did hear from Milwaukee police once, very vague details, but they did tell us they've set up a media staging area. We have not heard from anybody at the media staging area yet, and they're calling this a critical incident. So I think what complicates things here is you have an out-of-state officer who was brought into your community, and he's involved here, or she, And that adds another layer to this whole investigation and how this is handled.
And we don't, again, know, as we've been saying, what the cause of this was. What was the catalyst? What may have been a perceived threat by that officer or maybe an officer with him? Was there a threat? We don't know if there was, any physical altercation. We just don't know at this point. Was it related to anything political? We don't know if it was related to the RNC. If it was an isolated incident being away from Pfizer Forum, though, those questions obviously being investigated. Those questions still need to be answered, and you better believe there will be people with video, either cell phone video or surveillance video, coming forward saying, this is what went down. Stephanie Quirk has been, we just saw her right there, working the scene right there, gathering information. Not sure if we can go to her if we have anything from her, otherwise we'll let her. Yeah.
Okay, we'll go to her in a minute when we take Fox 6 News at 4, but we also know this word got down to the RNC very quickly. The mayor was there. Always odd when a Democratic mayor is at the RNC, but he is one of the hosts here and helped bring this giant event to the city. So he was down there doing media interviews, was doing a media interview with us when he had just found out about this incident occurring shortly in the 2 o'clock hour, about that time. So it's all unfolding.
Yeah, we're going to continue our coverage, of course, with Fox 6 News at 4 in just a bit. We'll have the very latest online, but it's still so many questions that need to be answered. Keep it right here on Fox 6. We're going to stay on top of this. We're going to work our sources. We've got crews on the scene there, and we've got information coming in virtually every minute as to what exactly happened here during this breaking news.
Fox 6 News at 4 starts now.
With stories that matter to you, this is Fox 6 News live at the RNC.
Welcome to Fox 6 News at 4, live from the RNC. We begin today with breaking news from just outside the security zone.
You've been watching this on Fox 6. Police from Columbus, Ohio, in town for the RNC, shot and killed a man this afternoon. We have coverage for you. The shooting happened near 14th and Vliet. Fox 6's Stephanie Quirk was one of the first to arrive on scene. She joins us now. Stephanie, what have you learned as the afternoon has progressed?
Well, at this moment, Ted, we are waiting for a press conference with Milwaukee police. I'm actually going to step out of the way so you can see the scene behind me is still very active. We've been here for the past few hours or so, and they've blocked off the whole area from the corner we're standing on near 17th and Vliet, 3 blocks south into King Park. Now, we've learned from the street angels and family members the man shot was homeless and lived in this neighborhood. We've also learned Milwaukee police are handling the investigation, and the U.S. Secret Service is playing some role in the investigation. Now, over the past few hours that we've been here, we've seen multiple unmarked squad cars entering and leaving the area as police investigate. And we also spoke to someone here on scene who lives just nearby. So I apologize. There are some technical difficulties there. We couldn't get you that sound, but he basically was just saying that he's tired of the violence in his community. Again, we are waiting to learn more from Milwaukee police, awaiting a press conference here near the corner of 17th and Vliet, and we will be sure to update you as soon as that happens. For now, reporting live in Milwaukee, Stephanie Quirk, Fox 6 News.
Stephanie, I imagine the main source of frustration is that this happened at all, but is there a lack of communication that people in that community say we need to know, and we need to know now what happened? Is that part of the frustration down there?
Absolutely. I can tell you the time we've been here, we've seen more and more community members kind of come to the scene here. Obviously, it's taped off, but just very frustrated, looking for answers as to what happened and why, Ted.
All right, Stephanie Quirk reporting live for us tonight at 17th and Vliet. We'll, of course, keep an eye on things here.
We were right here taping an episode of our podcast, Conventional Wisdom, with our guest, Milwaukee Mayor Cavalier Johnson, when the word came down about that shooting.
Here's what the mayor had to say about it.
I'm just being told that there was an officer involved shooting involving an outside jurisdiction here outside of the security perimeter at the RNC. I'm just getting briefed on this information at this time, so I don't really have more details than that. This is still really fresh to me.
Where do you go from here? What is your role now as you investigate, try to what happened and what the cause of all this was?
I will have conversations with police this afternoon. I'll talk to Chief Norman and others in the police department to find out more details, more information about exactly what happened.
That was about 90 minutes ago, just to keep you in perspective here. Sam Kramer is outside Fiserv Forum.
That's where he's been spending the last couple of days. Sam, has this incident had any effect on security around the arena within the perimeter?